Hello, guys, and welcome back to True Crimes with Richard Flopper. Flopper. That's a funny one. I'm your host, Richard Flopper, and today we're going to be going into one of the most controversial crimes, if you could call it that, in possibly maybe not in history, but for a hell of a long time in the UK. And this one is going to bend your mind a little bit, and you're going to have to bear with me. So today we're going to be talking about Lucy Conolly. Um, so I know that there's going to be split opinions in this true crime episode, so let me just jump right in it. So first off, we're going to talk about who is Lucy Conolly. So to begin with, let's talk about who she is and here's some of the things that you may not know or the headlines probably didn't report on. So Lucy is a wife and mother. She's married to a conservative counsellor and she's a registered childminder in Northampton. By all outward appearances, she was quiet and had an even admirable life. Yet a few years ago, her and her husband suffered the devastating loss of their young son in a tragic hospital incident. A pain few of us can imagine, and a grief that will probably never leave most of us behind if it happened to us. So that's one thing to bear in mind. But she wasn't fragile, you know. In fact, quite the opposite. Friends and acquaintances described her as warm, maternal, and engaged in her community. And here's another thing you may not know about Lucy Conolly. Um, she sponsored a Nigerian family in their journey towards British citizenship. One of the parents later called her the kindest British person I know. That detail alone complicates any simple narrative about what you're going to hear in today's story. So let's dive into the crime. Oh, so how did this seemingly ordinary woman end up posting such a tragic comment on a day after the aftermath of something absolutely terrible? So it all began on July 29th, 2024, in the heated aftermath of the Southport stabbings, an incident that was already stoking public fury and political rhetoric. On her ex account, Lucy's message said, "Mass deportations now. Set fire to the fucking hotels full of the bastards." Quite a lot to say, quite a strong opinion. But bear in mind, I think the whole country at that point was up in arms about, you know, the tragic loss of these three young girls and the scars that put in place. And obviously, having someone that had already lost a child of her own, I'm sure this was probably a burden that she didn't want to bear and probably snapped briefly. So the post was up for, I believe it was 3.5 hours. And it had 300,000 views. And while Lucy quietly deleted the post, the damage was done, and the legal gears were already turning because sometimes people are watching what you're doing, and it's loosely whether you've committed a crime or not. So, the UK has laws to protect on racial hatred, particularly under the Public Order Act of 1986. 1986, Lucy was charged with Section 19 for publishing or distributing written materials as threatening, abusive, or insulting the intention or stirring up racial hatred. Let's be clear, it's not about expressing an unpopular opinion. The law specifically targets intent and effect, the aim to stir up hatred toward a racial group. Um, you decide whether she did that or not. In September 2024, Connolly pleaded guilty. Her legal team did not dispute the post crossed the legal threshold for incitement, and in October, she was sentenced to 31 months in prison. The judge described her message as vile and an incitement to serious violence. So recently, she appealed in May 2025, and the court appeal upheld the sentence, ruling that the original decision was lawful and appropriate. So the case sparked immediate, intense public reaction, and it has done for the last year, almost year that it's been going on. Some saw Connolly's punishment as just and necessary. They pointed out that the language used, set fire to hotels, was not okay, and you shouldn't be talking like that. While others pretty much said, well, it is just free speech, and we all allowed to have an opinion, and she should have voiced that opinion. So you know, it's dramatic, really. To be fair, an early day motion was tabled in Parliament, signed by 12 MPs, expressing concern about imprisoning a non-violent primary caregiver for what they called a non-violent expression of opinion. They raised questions about proportionary rehabilitation and the role of intent. Even Prime Minister Keir Starmer was drawn into the conversation during Prime Minister's question times in 2025. Uh, he made his position clear. I support free speech, but not when it comes to incitement. The courts have ruled the sentence stands. Make of that what you will. Uh, Still, the debate raged in newsrooms and social media and at dinner tables up and down the country, and possibly over the world. This is quite a big case. So this is the bit where I'll come over to you guys and ask for your opinion. Was justice served? Let's pause and ask, was it truly served? On one hand, there's no doubt that the post was inflammatory, reckless, and dangerous. It dehumanized asylum seekers. It included literally calls to arson. Given the rise of hate crimes, authorities argue they must act decisively in such cases to deter others. But there are counterparts. Here's a woman who's suffered a tragedy in her own life and just didn't like bearing witness to another tragedy that had come to light, which was actually probably one of the most dangerous crimes, most malicious, awful things that's happened in this country since Ian Huntley. So you decide, you can make up your mind on that one, really. I think it's absolutely devastating what happened, and given the grief that she was probably still going through, probably blurted out a bit more than she should have. But that doesn't make her a bad person, and it certainly doesn't deserve 31 months in prison. But it's true crime, and that is the crime, and that is the truth, and this is the punishment. So it's it's a hard one. The much of the media seized on the most sensational aspects. Tory councillor's wife jailed for hate speech. Now, obviously, in everyday life, that would be such an amazing thing. You'd be laughing all the way to the bank. But given the circumstances and given the history of Lucy Conolly, it's not really. I don't think it's a crime. It is a crime, which is why it's on this channel. But I don't think it's a crime that deserves that much time in prison. But you guys can decide. Really, it's it's a short episode. Really, there's not really much to add along to this one. The story isn't over though. Lucy Conolly remains in prison, but the broader questions about speech, intention, and punishment are still very much alive. Um, Things should be changed to if it's not fair that one group can speak freely about how they feel about others and others. And sorry, this is a true crime podcast, but what is the real crime here? The fact that Lucy Conolly is in prison for 31 months for actually committing an offence, or the fact that it's does it warrant 31 months in prison? You guys can decide in the comments. Personally, primary caregivers, they should be held to a higher authority. They are primary caregivers, and they should be censored a little bit more than other people, but still 31 months in prison is a little bit much. So in this short little case about Lucy Conolly, please explode in the comments and let me know your thoughts, and let me know if there's anything I've missed. It's been a pleasure to make this second episode in what's going to be a long series, and they will get longer and longer as I get my brain into gear and getting around to doing these true crime podcasts. And obviously, a lot of you know me from the other show, know that it was more free speech, and so I've given you some of my thoughts in this, and not just the facts. The facts are personally down to you to decide what's real or not, but it is a crime, and it is going on the show. Thank you for watching. I'm your host, Richard Flopper. Peace.